What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's Top 10 Thursday. Every few years a game will come out that is just universally disliked. It's something that's overhyped, overpriced, or just overall not very good, and people end up really fixating on how bad it is. So this week, just for fun, I figured we'd take a look at the top 10 most hated games ever.
Number 10. Ride to Hell Retribution. This is one of those games that I think is aiming to be dark and gritty, and it ends up coming off just cartoonishly bad. You have motorcycles that defy physics, conversations that have voice acting so bad they sound like people are in a coma, and worst of all, awkward sex scenes where everybody is fully clothed. Nothing about Retribution has any logic or flow. It seems like somebody took the script of 15 cancelled games and put them into one sloppy mess. The only good thing that came out of this is the hilarious videos people have made ripping into it. Number 9. Brink. The tagline for this game was "Take Back the Ark." Basically, all of mankind has been forced to move onto one massive boat. Here we grow food, build cities, and try and just live normal lives until a brutal civil war breaks out. While this is a fascinating story, unfortunately Brink immediately throws all that lore out of the window to instead just be a boring shooter. To try and stand out, they mixed in some parkour elements. By running at full speed, you could sprint up walls or leap off tall ledges. Well, you're supposed to be able to anyways. Glitches often made players stick to objects. Guns could just jam up in your hands, or sometimes you just stop respawning at all. This was clearly an unfinished project, and they just pushed it out to try and make a quick buck, and because of it, the developers faced some major backlash. Number 8. Final Fantasy XIII. One of the longest running and most beloved franchises of all time is Final Fantasy. Square Enix takes its time on each entry of the series, only releasing it when it's perfectly crafted to their intended vision. That's probably why it came as quite a shock when 13 was released and it was a blob of bad plot and dull combat. Let me try and break this down for you. These people are called l'Cie. They have a secret mission that's been implanted inside their brains by this thing called the fal'Cie. If they don't accomplish this mission in the next few days, then they'll all become monsters. If that doesn't sound strange enough, this game also tries to blend in alternate worlds, evil armies, and just so much sloppy storytelling. This lackluster title ended up pushing a lot of people away from the Final Fantasy series. In fact, a lot of the die-hard fans ended up turning away forever. Number 7. Resident Evil 6. When it comes to survival horror, Resident Evil has proven itself to be the best time and again. The original games were all about slow, creepy scares and haunting locations, but from Resident Evil 4 onward, they started to take a more action focus. Everything was going well until we got to RE6, and suddenly everything went to hell. First of all, it's not frightening in any way. Honestly, it looks more like a ridiculous Michael Bay movie than anything else. There's so many pointless explosions, QuickTime events, and even a silly scene where you're having to fight off a zombie president of the United States. I think what fans hated the most was just seeing their once glorious horror games getting turned into nothing more than a cheesy monster movie. Capcom, if you ever see this video, please make Resident Evil great once again. Number 6. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sega's made a lot of poor choices with Sonic recently, but back in 2006, they nearly destroyed the character entirely. With this game, the developers were trying to give him a fresh start, to let him try something new, but in the end, they created one of the worst games ever. To start with, let's talk glitches, because they're literally everywhere. Going in a straight line can have you falling through the ground or accidentally slipping into a wall when you're not supposed to. Trying to execute a move will sometimes not trigger. In fact, sometimes pressing buttons will do nothing at all. Just trying to finish a level successfully can be a real chore due to persistent errors. If that wasn't cringeworthy enough, they also slapped in a story about Sonic trying to save a princess, and it even has an incredibly awkward scene where they kiss. What designer thought that this was a good idea? After this game utterly bombed, Sonic became pretty much nothing more than a joke. Number 5. Prince of Persia. It's hard to believe, but the first Prince of Persia came out in 1989, and the series evolved a lot since then. It went from being a 2D platformer to a time-traveling puzzle game, and now we have this version, which is a reboot that's pretty awesome. Sadly, the designers snuck in a greedy little surprise. The end of this game is sold separately as DLC. Yes, you heard that right. The true ending of this full-priced game is an additional $10. If you don't buy this add-on, all you get is a weak cliffhanger ending. Our hero, the prince, is forced to unleash a dark god in order to revive his closest friend, and the final scene shows him running through the desert with her in his arms. If you only bought the $60 game, this is where the plot ends, and that's ridiculous. I actually think that's downright evil. You're punishing the people who purchased your game. Ubisoft received thousands of emails demanding that they make that ending free, but they just wouldn't listen. In an attempt to let the whole issue die, Ubisoft cancelled any follow-up sequels, and they just kinda hoped that everybody would forget this money-hungry maneuver. Number 4. Superman 64. The Man of Steel has had a rocky history with gaming. On the surface, creating a good Superman game appears simple. Seriously, just look at his abilities. He's got turbo speed, bulletproof skin, he can even throw tanks if he wanted to. With things like that, you'd think making a brilliant game would actually be rather easy. The corporate guys over at DC Comics has some very strict rules about what you can and can't do with their superheroes. For this game, Superman wasn't allowed to hurt any humans or do anything that might be seen as evil, so because of it, most of the gameplay is you simply floating through rings. What's really appalling is that this game was $70 when it originally came out in 1999. If you adjust that to modern day pricing, that's about $95. Can you imagine paying that much for a game that basically amounts to being a tour guide of Metropolis? This game is one big, overpriced fail. Number 3. Duke Nukem Forever. This was one seriously screwed up project. They spent a total of 14 years working on this game, and when we finally got our hands on it, well, nobody was exactly happy with the result. In the 90s, Duke Nukem was a breakout hit, and for two main reasons. The gameplay was extremely fast, it was always focused on the next big kill, the next cool explosion, it kept you wanting to keep playing. The other key factor is that they mixed in a lot of goofy humor. When they were making Duke Nukem Forever, they clearly wanted to take these core concepts and bring some fresh life into modern first-person shooters. Unfortunately, they totally missed the point. To put it bluntly, this game sucks. Every single level is just you walking through winding corridors, blasting the same 4 dudes before going against a slightly larger boss. Nothing about it ever stands out, it just seems like one thing being repeated over and over again. The only thing memorable about this game is how overhyped it was. Number 2. Mass Effect 3. There's a lot of reasons to love the Mass Effect games. They have a grand universe filled with hundreds of unique choices. You get to fly spaceships into the deepest reaches of the cosmos, and even face off against an ancient, evil race of machines that thinks the nicest thing to do is to exterminate all life. The storytelling in these games is just magnificent, and that's why everybody got really worried when all of a sudden Electronic Arts came in and took over for Mass Effect 3. Having spent countless hours playing through this trilogy, gamers are expecting the conclusion of this tale to be legendary, but instead we got 3 very basic options. You could either destroy the evil robots, merge with the evil robots, or become a hive mind and take over the evil robots. That's it. No subtlety, no nuance, just a linear A, B, or C choice. To put it mildly, fans were outraged. People made petitions to try and get them to fix this clumsy conclusion. The hashtag boycott EA was trending all over the internet. That year, Electronic Arts even won the award for the shittiest company. This shows what happens when you forget the golden rule of game making. Never betray your fans. Number 1. Alien Colonial Marines. What you're seeing here is the gameplay trailer of Alien Colonial Marines. This is important because now we're going to take a look at the actual game. Notice anything different? The graphics have been downgraded, enemies aren't nearly as smart, and a lot of minor details have been removed. You might be thinking, hey, isn't that lying? They sold you a game that doesn't really exist. Isn't that fraud? As a matter of fact, it is. Sega and Gearbox were taken to court and sued for deliberately misleading consumers. They ended up having to pay over $1 million in fines. Maybe if the game was half decent, people would have been a little bit more forgiving, but let's be frank, this game is garbage. It was just programmed awfully, nothing really seemed to actually operate at all. If you somehow managed to wrestle past all the technical problems and made it to the final fight, even the Queen, the final boss, had a terrible habit of glitching out. Aliens Colonial Marines is despised by nearly everyone, and for that reason, I'm giving it my award as the most hated game ever.
Did your favorite crappy game not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Hey, let me sneak a little factoid in here. Did you know that for years, people actually hated Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask? People said it was the shitty kids Zelda. Really, that's a piece of history. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked this video, maybe check out my last video. Please subscribe, and if you want, share this somewhere with your friends.